There is a version of you that nobody can reach. Not through an insult, not through silence, not through disappointment, not through someone walking out of a room without acknowledging you. That version of you exists. But right now, most people aren't living there. They're living somewhere much more dangerous, inside the emotional reactions of everyone around them. Someone is cold toward you, and your entire internal state shifts. Someone posts something that feels like a dig at you, and the rest of your day belongs to them. Someone raises their voice, and you feel something tighten in your chest like a clenched fist. That tightening? That is not emotion. That is surrender. And today, we need to talk about what it actually means when you let someone else's behavior become the weather inside your own mind. Most people think emotional control is about suppressing what you feel, about becoming stone, about training yourself to feel nothing so nothing can land. That is not what this is. The people who suppress emotion don't become powerful. They become brittle. They store pressure until it explodes in the wrong moment, at the wrong person, about the wrong thing. And suddenly, every interaction they've ever mismanaged comes flooding out at once. Suppression is not control. Suppression is a delay. What we're talking about is something far more precise. Something that operates below the surface. A structural shift in how you relate to the emotional signals other people send you, and whether those signals have the authority to move you. Because here is the truth most people haven't been told. Other people's behavior is a broadcast. Whether you receive it, that is your choice. The man who can be provoked has already announced his weakness. Calmness is not a feeling. It is a wall. The first truth. You were trained to react. You were not born reactive. You were taught to be. From early in your life, the people around you operated on a simple emotional economy. When they expressed something, frustration, disappointment, approval, withdrawal, you were expected to respond accordingly. To adjust, to come toward them or step back from them based on what they projected in your direction. This is how emotional dependency develops. Not through trauma, necessarily. Through repetition. You learned that someone else's mood was information you needed to act on. You learned that when the temperature in the room dropped, it was your job to notice, to interpret, to respond. And over years of practicing this, you wired your nervous system to be perpetually scanning, always reading the room, always measuring what others are feeling so you can calibrate yourself accordingly. Ask yourself honestly, how much of your inner life on any given day is a reaction to other people? The irritation that started when someone interrupted you in a meeting, the low-grade anxiety from a text message someone left unread, the quiet satisfaction that appeared only after someone gave you a compliment, as if your sense of worth was waiting to be issued by another person like a permit. This is the architecture of emotional dependency. And it is running inside you right now, quietly, without your permission. The second truth. Reactions are invitations. Here is where this becomes strategic. When you react visibly to what someone does, when they push and you move, when they speak and your face changes, when they go cold and you immediately work to warm things back up, you are not just responding. You are showing them a map. You are showing them exactly which pressure points produce movement, Most people do this without realizing it. They assume emotional reactions are private, internal weather that others may occasionally glimpse but cannot truly use. This is a dangerous assumption. Understand this. People remember what moved you, not consciously, not strategically in most cases, but they remember, they catalog it, and they return to those same levers, often without knowing why, simply because they worked before. The person who criticized your work and watched you get defensive, they learned something. They learned that your confidence is negotiable, that if they introduce doubt, you'll scramble to close the gap. They will do it again. The person who went silent and watched you pursue them, they learned something. They learned that withdrawal is leverage over you, that the fear of losing access to them makes you more pliable, more willing to give. They will do it again. Reactions are invitations. Every visible crack you show becomes a door someone will eventually push through. The third truth. The gap is everything between what happens to you and how you respond to it. There is a space. Most people don't know that space exists. Events arrive and responses follow immediately. A seamless chain of stimulus and reaction so smooth it feels like nature. Like reflex, like something you had no part in choosing. But it is not reflex, it is habit. And habits can be interrupted. The people who are hardest to manipulate are not the people who feel nothing. They are the people who have widened that gap, who have trained themselves. Through deliberate practice, through repeated exposure to friction, through conscious attention, to pause inside the space between what arrives and what they give back. That pause is not passivity. It is the most active thing you can do. In that pause, you ask a question that most people never ask. Does this deserve my energy? Not is this bothering me? Not do I have feelings about this? Of course you do. You're human. But whether those feelings need to leave your body and enter the interaction, that is a different question entirely. And most of the time, the answer is no. Most provocations are not events worth attending. They are tests, and you keep passing them by showing up. Stop passing tests you didn't agree to take. The fourth truth. Emotional access is a resource. Think of your emotional state as something finite, not your capacity to feel, that is limitless, but your capacity to be moved by external forces without cost. Every time someone provokes a reaction from you and you give it to them, something transfers. Your clarity dims slightly, your focus narrows, your decision-making runs hotter and less precisely. And the person who triggered that state, whether they intended to or not, walks away holding something that was yours. Calm is not indifference. It is the conservation of a resource. The executive who doesn't flinch at bad news isn't feeling nothing. They're choosing where to direct their attention, and it isn't toward the theater of reaction. The negotiator who doesn't show discomfort when the other side walks away isn't indifferent to the outcome. They're protecting the leverage that calm affords them. The person in your life who never seems rattled isn't living without feeling. They've simply stopped giving their emotional state away to people who haven't earned it. Emotional access is something you can grant or withhold. You have been treating it like a public square. Start treating it like a private room. Not everyone gets in. The fifth truth. Distance is not coldness. There is a fear that lives underneath emotional reactivity that nobody talks about openly. The fear that if you stop reacting, you will stop connecting. That if you create distance between yourself and the behavior of others, you will become untouchable in the wrong way. Sealed off, isolated, alone in your own composure. This fear is understandable, and it is almost entirely wrong. Emotional distance, properly understood, is not the absence of warmth. It is the absence of need. Warmth, given freely because you choose to give it, is one of the most powerful social forces that exists. It draws people toward you. It creates genuine trust. It communicates that you are stable, that you are safe, that being around you does not require walking on glass. But warmth performed desperately because you need someone to respond a certain way. That is not connection. That is negotiation dressed up as feeling. People sense the difference. Not always consciously, but they sense it. The person who gives warmth conditionally, who becomes cold when they don't get what they need, who runs warm only when approval is coming back in return. That person teaches everyone around them that the warmth is a transaction. And transactional warmth creates transactional relationships. When you stop needing a specific response from people, the warmth you give becomes real. And real warmth is rare enough to be recognized immediately. The sixth truth. Stability is social authority. You have probably noticed this about certain people. There are people in any group, any room, any dynamic, who seem to hold a kind of gravity. Not because they are the most aggressive, not because they speak the loudest or push the hardest, but because something about them does not move when others try to move it. They are the fixed point. When conflict enters a room, they remain calm, and the room begins to organize itself around that calm. When someone escalates, they don't escalate back, and the escalation has nowhere to land and dies. When pressure is applied, they absorb it without deforming. And the person applying pressure starts to feel slightly foolish, slightly overextended, slightly exposed. Emotional stability is social authority in its most invisible form. It does not announce itself. It demonstrates itself. And every time it demonstrates itself, every time someone tries to destabilize you and finds nothing to destabilize, your position in every room you inhabit quietly rises. You were not designed to be the fixed point for other people's emotional chaos. But becoming it is one of the most powerful shifts available to you. Not through effort, through stillness. The loudest person in the argument has already lost something. The seventh truth. The real manipulation you're missing in it. Here is something worth sitting with. Some of the people who move you most are not doing it through aggression. They are not raising their voices or making threats or creating obvious pressure. They are doing something quieter and in some ways more effective. They are performing helplessness. They are suffering visibly. They are making their pain available for you to witness, and then waiting, patiently, sometimes expertly, to see whether you will take responsibility for it. Whether your guilt or your care or your need to be a good person will cause you to rearrange yourself around their distress. This is not cruelty. In many cases, it is not even fully conscious, but it operates. And it operates specifically on people with high empathy, high moral standards, and a strong internal drive to be someone who doesn't cause harm. If that describes you, understand this. Being moved by suffering does not make you a good person. Being moved by real suffering makes you a good person. Being systematically collapsed by performed suffering makes you a resource. The difference between compassion and manipulation is not always loud. Sometimes the only way to find it is to ask, quietly and honestly, if I stop responding to this, does the suffering persist? Or does it relocate to a different audience? The answer will tell you what you're actually dealing with. The eighth truth. What you practice, you become. Emotional reactivity is not a character trait. It is a pattern. And patterns can be interrupted, replaced, and over time, dissolved entirely. But this does not happen through philosophy alone. It does not happen by reading this and feeling a shift and assuming the shift will hold. Ideas are not enough. Ideas are the beginning. What comes after is practice. Specifically, the practice of behaving like the person you intend to become before you feel like that person yet. This is uncomfortable because the practice requires you to act from a place of calm before calm is actually present, to hold your reaction before you fully processed what you're feeling. To pause before the pause is natural. It will feel false at first. Do it anyway. Every time you choose the pause over the reaction, every time you absorb something without immediately transmitting it back, you are making a structural change to how your nervous system relates to external input. Not permanently, not in one instance, but cumulatively, over days and weeks and months of practiced restraint, something shifts. You stop being the person who reacts. You start being the person who decides. And those are not the same person. The ninth truth. Silence is not absence. Most people treat silence as a void, as something that needs to be filled before it becomes uncomfortable, before the other person misinterprets it, before the situation tips in the wrong direction. So they speak, they explain, they manage the interpretation. And in doing so, they give. Silence, real silence, composed silence, silence that does not apologize for itself, is one of the most underused instruments available to you. It carries weight that words frequently dilute. It communicates competence. It communicates that you are not anxious about what is happening, that you are not in a hurry to smooth things over, that you are willing to let the moment be exactly what it is without rushing to reshape it. When someone says something designed to provoke you and you say nothing, not because you have no response, but because you have chosen not to use it, something happens in the space between you. The provocation hangs in the air. It becomes their problem, their energy, their exposure. You gave them nothing to work with. And suddenly the discomfort they tried to put on you has found its way back. This is not cruelty. This is gravity. You simply stopped holding the weight they threw at you. The 10th truth. The cost of being easy to move. Consider what your life looks like right now from the outside. Not from your perspective, from the perspective of everyone who interacts with you regularly. What have they learned about you through your reactions? What have they cataloged without perhaps ever consciously meaning to? They know what frustrates you because they've seen it on your face. They know what you need from them because you've pursued it when they withheld it. They know what you fear losing because you've tightened up when it was threatened. They know where the pressure points are because the pressure points have announced themselves again and again through the involuntary honesty of your emotional responses. You have been teaching people how to handle you. And in many cases, you have been teaching them that handling you is easy. This does not require bad intent on anyone's part. It is simply what happens when you operate without control over your own emotional broadcasting. Information flows out. People receive it. People use it, not maliciously, but naturally, the way all people use available information. Stop broadcasting. Not everything you feel needs an audience. Not every internal state needs to be externally confirmed. The person who keeps their own counsel, who feels fully but does not display carelessly, that person is infinitely harder to read. And people who are hard to read are given more room, more respect, and more space to operate. Because you cannot manipulate what you cannot predict. There is a version of this you haven't reached yet. Not an absence of emotion. You don't want that. Emotion is information. The goal is not to be numb. The goal is to be the one who decides what happens to that information after it arrives. Whether it becomes a reaction or whether it becomes something quieter, something strategic, something controlled, something that stays yours. What happens when you've done the internal work is not that people can no longer affect you. What happens is that they stop being able to steer you. And once people stop being able to steer you, the entire dynamic of your relationships changes. What you allow in, what you respond to, who gets access to your real state, and who gets the composed surface that reveals nothing. You become difficult. Not cold, not cruel, not distant in the way that breaks connection. Difficult in the way that commands respect. Difficult in the way that makes people choose their approach more carefully before they try to move you. Difficult in the way that makes your presence something people have to rise to meet, rather than something they casually drag into whatever emotional weather they happen to be carrying. This is where the shift lands, not in a single moment, not in a single decision, but gradually, through accumulated practice, through repeated choices, through the slow and deliberate process of deciding what you are no longer available for. The work is not finished here. There's a layer beneath emotional control that most people never find. One that determines whether the control holds under real pressure or collapses the moment someone finds the right angle. The difference between those two outcomes isn't discipline. It isn't willpower. It's something structural. And that is what comes next.